Hey, everybody, thanks again for joining me for another what I suspect is going to be an exciting interview. Thank you for your time today, and I know you're going to learn. This is The Rundown with Ramon, where we help to make your life better or help you start or grow your business. The Rundown with Ramon on Black Enterprise. I'm here talking to a new friend of mine, Jermeen Sherman, and Jermeen is with Black Ampbition. I believe I have the name pronounced correctly, but you'll tell me in a minute, Jermeen. So let's dive right in. Can you talk a bit about yourself, just who you are, and also parallel to that, what is Black Ampbition? What brought you here? I always like to get a little personal, know about people. So first, tell us who you are, and then about Black Ampbition, and we'll dive into it. And again, welcome. I'm glad you're here with me today, Jermeen.
Of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join to share more about Black Ampbition and the amazing work that we do. As you mentioned, I'm Jermeen Sherman. I'm the Managing Director of Programs and Operations at Black Ampbition. I'd like to say that me finding the organization was really fortuitous. I grew up in Atlanta, single mom, the trajectory of my own life, I like to say, was forever and positively impacted because I had folks who just took an interest in me and were really committed to sharing access and opportunity with me in a way that would kind of change my life. And so that's sort of, lots of different career options, but really knew that I wanted to fundamentally land with an organization that was focused on building just both the protective capacities, but the sort of the power of communities of color to actualize a vision of success that was derived from that community. So at Black Ampbition, which is a nonprofit organization founded by the one and only Pharrell Williams, with the objective of closing the opportunity and wealth gap in America by investing in underrepresented entrepreneurs. And so our North Star, everything that we do is really focused on how do we create both the space, the conditions, and the relationships that position Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs to excel uninterrupted. And I pause there to really encourage folks to think about what that means, right? That underrepresented entrepreneurs are just faced with barriers that are so unique to us, right? That inhibit our growth and our opportunity, whether that's access to capital or redlining or racism or gender bias or identity bias, right? That really distract us from building and innovating in the way that we do and we do so well. And so we want to work to remove those barriers so that our entrepreneurs just flourish and are able to kind of create wealth generationally, but also share those opportunities with others. And so we do that in a few different ways. One of our biggest signature program is a national prize competition. It happens annually and applications are currently open. So if you don't know about it, you've got to visit blackambitionsprize.com to learn more about that. But it's a national prize competition that connects early stage entrepreneurs with access to capital. And we're talking big checks here. Our annual grand prize is $1 million to one company. And prizes range between $15,000 all the way up to $1 million. So $50,000, $100,000, $250,000,
I just want to say that's a serious chunk of change. I deal with like, hey, you won the grand prize. Come on stage and get $2,000 in a bag of chips.
And that's great. That's great.
It is great. It is.
But what I would say, and what I love to share, and that really sort of energizes me, is that the access to capital is obviously transformative for our founders.
Yes.
But what they all comment on is the network, right? Like the cash was great. It helped me hire my first 3 employees. It positioned me to go on to pursue other pipeline funding, but it was more so the mentorship that you gave me, right? We've had founders who, through our 3-month mentorship program, have been able to build relationships, to get guidance, to have thought partners, and connect with people who've personally invested in their businesses, right? Who open up their Rolodex, their context to facilitate warm introductions. Through Pharrell's brand likeness and his network, we're able to really connect founders with whether it's retail opportunities or e-commerce opportunities, but really just helping our founders get access to opportunities and frankly rooms that aren't necessarily readily available, right? And so we really stand in that gap of we're going to do the hard work of finding all of the like-minded ecosystem partners, angel investors, funders who share our vision of equity and sort of equitable access. And we're going to build a really strong community around you so that all you have to do is focus on building the business that you're building. And I'll share that, our prize has 2 verticals. So one focused on Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs who are building businesses in one of 5 categories nationally. That's Web3, healthcare, technology, media and entertainment, or consumer products and services. And then we've got a second track that's primarily and exclusively focused on Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs who have an HBCU affiliation, right? So thinking about entrepreneurship at a much earlier stage in our journeys, whether you're a current student or a recent graduate within the last 5 years. So if you're building a business, you meet that eligibility criteria, we would love to see your application come in.
I love that. And you talked about Pharrell Williams. We all know him as, not like we know him like he's our, neighbor next door, but the entertainer, the publicist. What was his vision? Then I will move on back to Black Ambition, but just talk about him a bit. His vision. Why did he start it? Was this a group of people who came to him? Was he laying in bed one day? Dang, how can I help the Black community? Which version or something? Totally. Talk about that journey to being here,
Yeah, of course. I love to hear him talk about sort of the impetus for the organization and sort of what really encouraged him to do it. He's such a visionary leader, right? And such a creative and just a successful entrepreneur in his own right. And, if you look at just the work that he's done, the commitment that he has to his hometown, the other ventures that he's built, he's got such a commitment to being of service to others and making sure that Brown communities have the opportunity to be excellent. And so he does that through his school, Yellow in Norfolk. Just given the opportunities and the partnerships that he's had with other creatives, saw a gap, right? An opportunity or a gap in sort of the access that minority entrepreneurs had to grow their ventures, whether that was supports in like the accelerator incubator space or even kind of the growth stage. And so I think it kind of just started as a brainchild of, what would the world look like if folks could innovate uninterrupted? And that's a very difficult question to ask. I think Pharrell loves difficult questions and like to take on very challenging things. And so he set out to build an ecosystem that provides that answer, right? That sort of creates a network of both supports and material resources that positions entrepreneurs to excel in such a way that bridges a wealth gap. And I don't say that just like money's great, sure. And it kind of, it's helpful.
It is important.
It is important, but it's critical to our well-being, right? Yes. It's critical to the well-being of Brown communities, particularly when you think about the things that are happening today. When you think about the relationship between influence and power and dollars, and how not being in the right places and not having access excludes us in ways that are devastating to our physical well-being, our mental well-being, and literally, our life expectancies, right? And so the cool thing about being Brown is that, like, I don't know what it is, but like it's ancestral talent. Like, we are innovative, we are resilient, we build things out of nothing. And so, there's so much data on this. When you think about just like the creative and entrepreneurial spirit of Brown communities compared to white counterparts, it's unprecedented. But then you ask questions around like, do you have the resources to build it? Can you start it? Are you able to raise a family and friend round? And that's where the discrepancy kind of comes in, right? And so we want to remove those barriers. Just like, all you need is the idea and the energy, the spirit, the willingness to do it, and an MVP. And we've got
all you need is whatever God gave you. That's it.
Exactly.
I understand. And I think one thing that's interesting about this program, I'm sure there's others, but I as one who is steeped into small business, oftentimes many of the grants, funds, prizes, contests are for these smaller businesses, which is great. You need it for your flower shop. You need it for this, that, or the other. This one, I believe, as I read, it is focused, I think, it's on the high growth. We want to know those who are going to be the next Google or Amazon or acquired by the billion-dollar company. Talk about that a bit and how this, as I'm understanding it, is a bit different than just, the people I'm around a lot of times, like you want a grant to build your cup company, which is great. We need those smaller, but this seemed to be the higher growth, needing capital to get to the next trajectory. Is that right? What I understand?
That's absolutely right. I think, we surveyed the market and the programs that existed and saw a gap in supports for folks who are beyond the ideation stage, right? But not yet at like a really healthy MRR or like, close their kind of Series E rounds, right? Like there are folks that are kind of strongly in that middle growth phase, right, where they've got traction, maybe they might even be pre-revenue, right? But they've got a prototype in hand. They've done the work to validate that there is a place in the market for their product or service. And so they just need that kind of initial investment. And so we really target those folks for the national prize competition. At Black Ambition, we're a super small team, but an incredibly mighty team. And so we've got an entire other portfolio of work that really also supports folks who are at the ideation stage. In addition to the HBCU prize competition, we have a whole HBCU tour that we've launched in partnership with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and Techstars, where we literally visit HBCU campuses, 3 days, super high energy program. By day 3, you are building businesses and we're putting checks in your hand. And the next step for you would be, apply for the Black Ambition Prize, right? Like we're creating a real strong continuum and a pipeline of supports from ideation all the way to growth stage. What I'll share is that our approach really works. And I don't just share that as like a fan and a person who works for the organization, but
as one who has a slight bias.
A little biased, a little biased, but it works, right? I mean, we are 2 years in, and as a result of Black Ambition's investment, we funded 65 companies at approximately $6 million. Those companies have gone on to raise almost $70,000, right? So that tells us that, like, we're doing something right. We're getting folks in the right rooms. That the Black Ambition being that kind of initial and first institutional capital in really makes a difference and empowers our founders to go on and just do the work that they know how to do, right?
Got it. This is powerful for sure. And then can you talk about any of the, I know everyone, like who's your favorite baby? I don't want you to do that, but whether you want to mention names or whether you want to mention it as a metaphorical, can you talk about one or two of the companies? Are these medical companies? Is there any company that had a special heart valve? Are these the next PayPal? Is it the company that has some technology inside Uber? I have no clue. Hair care? Yeah. Talk about one or two of the companies, whether the names or not names, whatever you wish. Talk about those, who you can think of.
This conversation can go on and on for a while.
Okay. Well, I have a 50 terabyte drive and I have 40 hours. So let's bring it.
All right. I'm going to share two thoughts. Sure. The things that I would say consistently the team just loves about the founders that we support is there's this just common thread between them, right? Like we look at scalable, high growth businesses, but in some ways they're all like social innovation programs, right? They all have this commitment, this deep commitment to doing business the right way and in a way that prioritizes, return on investment, but also well-being, right? And so I share that to say that, we've got our grand prize winner from 2021. His name is Justin Turk. Shout out to Livegistics, the CEO of Livegistics, an online SaaS platform for construction management based up in Detroit. And they've been able, fifth generation entrepreneur, really transform the entire business from being kind of, construction the traditional way that we know to being more back-end, real-time construction management, actualizing efficiencies and kind of vendors and sort of waste management. And, that he's been able to land a ton of government contracts, really growing. But outside of that, like he's a person from Detroit. He wants his kids to grow up in a healthy and beautiful Detroit. And so he's launched a variety of programs that are just committed to making sure Detroit is clean and beautiful, right? And that's not a thing that he's paid to do. It's just a thing that he's committed to doing. And also diverse hiring practices, right? Training vendors to make sure that folks who look like us have more opportunities to get in that space, right? Making sure that there's a strong advancement pipeline and his employees. And more than that, hiring employees, right? He went from I want to say 3 employees to 36 over the course of like a year and a half. That's growth, that's transformation, that's a deep commitment to communities where he lives, and that just creates so much wealth and wealth opportunity creation for the folks who works for him. So, but I share that to say that theme is true of all of our founders. Just an amazing commitment to wanting to what we call share the codes. It's a phrase that Pharrell likes to use, and it is
say that phrase again.
Sharing the codes.
Sharing the codes, okay.
When I figure out something that works, I yell it to the top of my lungs, right? Like our founders, if they land a meeting with the venture capitalist and they learn about a funding opportunity for someone else, I mean, my phone blows up in the chat, right? You got to meet this person. Here's their email. I shared your deck. I've got this meeting. Come along with me. It is just a beautiful community of folks who see like the commonalities and shared learning objectives versus like what in some cases and in some other organizations looks more like competition, right? And so I think that's the kind of the general ethos of the Black Ambition founder, just a commitment to giving back. We have a pledge here called the BII pledge. It's a commitment to building, investing, and positively influencing the communities in which you operate. And so all of our founders do that. On the, just things that I love, I mentioned 65 companies we've invested in. I could name them all, but and at some point, all of their products and services have become household names for us. We, give them in holiday gifting guides. We procure them for all of our events and dinner events that we host. But a couple of really cool things. Our grand prize winner this year, Camille Bell from Pound Cake Cosmetics, has a lipstick, which Times actually called the best invention of 2022, because it is a shade that doesn't change based on your skin. And, for women, that's a big thing. Michael Tennant has a beautiful card game and kind of a portfolio of products that's all around helping folks cultivate empathy, both in the workplace and your personal lives. And he's kind of gamified that in a way that's easily accessible and fun. Chantel, who's out of Atlanta, has a cool series. It started with kids' deodorants that she said she came home one day and her child smelled like a man, and she had to address that. And she's had just the most beautiful, beautiful journey of building a business from her living room, scaling in such a way, getting in Target, and then having her warehouse catch on fire and losing it all overnight. And when I say she rebuilt, she brought a ton of people along with her, and has really shared some critical lessons along the way. I mean, I can go on and on, but we've got.
Can I ask you, Jermeen, you said it at the beginning, but I'm just so impressed at the fire you have for this. You can feel your personal energy. You've said it already, but I'm just curious again, why? This is not just an organization where you're like, oh, you clearly like these 65 and growing companies and what you're doing. Why? What's the fire come from? And I'm sure your team has the same fire.
Oh, for sure. You know, it just very much aligns with what I believe to be my life purpose. Through personal experience and observation, there are a few things that I would say I know for sure, right? Like everything can be questioned, everything is kind of negotiable, but I know for sure that the world isn't fair. I know that talent is equally distributed, and I know that opportunity is not. And you know, I started by saying that, like, I started my career at a really small nonprofit in Atlanta. We went into the lowest performing schools, we identified the lowest performing students, and we taught them debate education as a means to cultivate critical thinking skills, research skills, advocacy skills. And that was the first time that I saw a group of kids who've been told to me were like trouble kids, gotta go to jail. I mean, all of the terrible things that we say about brown kids that we don't understand. Change the trajectory of their lives forever. I mean, we're talking going to school, landing big jobs, dreaming beyond the confines of their communities. And so I think I knew that I wanted to do something that was related to like barrier busting. And that was a place where I saw real results. You know, I went on to work in education, communication, business school, and public management consulting. And even in that world, I found myself only interested in kind of the public sector projects, right? Like working with, I spent a couple of years working with youth in foster care and juvenile justice and youth who were just systems impacted, and thinking about like, they were dealt a hand that had nothing to do with them. How do we mitigate the impact of that on their lives to make sure that they can dream and vision and innovate, right? And so Black Ambition feels like such a gift, because while I'm on the other end of that spectrum, right, like I'm working with founders who are just amazing, right? We're talking doctors and lawyers and project managers and engineers who, you know, were doing well and saw an opportunity to fill a need that hadn't been met, right? And took and gambled on themselves and bet on themselves and have that commitment to bringing others along. So it just feels like, I think what you're sensing is the energy and the gratitude, that it's like, I get to do what I love, but I know that it works. And that's such a gift, right? Lots of people don't have that. And I know that it's the right work to do. So that's what you're seeing.
I love it. No, thank you. I feel it, and I love it so much. I'm curious, another question and a few more questions, and thank you so much for your time. By the way, one more time, give us the full name of the organization, website. Feel free to give that one more time as we're going to repeat that one more time.
Of course. You can learn more about Black Ambition and our national prize competition at blackambitionprize.com. We are Black Ambition Prize across all the social, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. And if you've got any questions or want to reach out, email us at info@blackambitionprize.com.
I always like to slide in that little PSA in between my interviews.
I appreciate that.
You know, in case people are skipping along or something. Talk to the startups, the founders who are watching this right now. You've answered it partly already, but what do you find are the keys to success, or what are the keys to failure? Agnostic of Brown, which I know is the big focus, but talk to startups. What are you seeing also in the realm of Ramon? Here's why we're seeing startups are failing. Here's why we're seeing they're succeeding. Can you talk about that? What threads are you seeing? Maybe there's people who've been in your program and have failed out, not because of you, but we told them over and over again they had to hire whatever they didn't, and now they're. Can you talk about that side of entrepreneurship and startup world? And you know, it's a tough game no matter what you are. Of course, it's tougher, as you already alluded to, being Brown. But talk about just some of the things that people are doing wrong, or what they should be doing right, whichever way you want.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. You know, I think there are a couple things to consider, right? At the top of the year, I think it was NBC did a report that showed that access to venture capital declined by 45% for brown minorities this year. And we're already pretty low, right? Like I think we'd only ever reached kind of around 2% total access. So that's really damaging. And so you can just think about how difficult it is to innovate in this environment where having access to build out and validate your ideas is really difficult. And so access to capital is obviously a challenge that lots of startups face. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge that we have to address. And it's not only, cutting checks, it's also educating folks around like different types of capital and having access to institutional capital. And a lot of that has to come with like paradigm shifts, right? Helping VCs and banking communities really understand the value of brown entrepreneurs and why, frankly, betting on us is just good business. Outside of that, when you think about just the difficulty of innovating, we survey our founders to really understand what their learning objectives are, how we can add the most value. And another thing that we kind of hear quite often, and this is specific to folks who are kind of beyond that ideation stage or at the growth stage, is really just like talent, right? And finding like quality fractional leadership and being able to afford them to like build out, whether it's a tech-enabled platform or something that's sort of heavy engineering. So kind of being able to match talent. I think sort of beyond that, entrepreneurship is difficult, right? It can be a very lonely journey.
Just by itself, it is, yes.
Just burn out, right? Like the Black Ambition founders, many of them, we say this often, they have 9 to 5s and then they have 5 to 9s, right? And when you do that for 3, 4, 5 years and you've got little ones and family obligations, that become difficult. And so oftentimes it's also just a test of willpower and how long you can kind of endure it. And so I think that it's a combination of those barriers and then some traditional institutional barriers that I think the traditional sort of, underrepresented startup founder is facing. When I think about solutions, the best solution that I can advocate for is, of course, applying to the Black Ambition Prize, right? Like have a partner institution that's really willing to work toward working through those things with you and willing to open up the network to really sort of tackle those things head on. But I'd say outside of that, it's just like surrounding yourself with folks who are also building, surrounding yourself with people who share your vision, who are innovating themselves and who can provide some amount of relief, whether that's just thought partnership, kind of sharing what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. But I think that having that network, and which is in some cases, kind of a protective mentorship network, makes a world of a difference. And that's a lot of what our founders comment on when they reflect back on their time with Black Ambition, even as alumni, that is the thing that really sort of energized them, that helped them to kind of take the next steps.
I love that. I gave a talk, Jermeen, about Entrepreneurial Depression. I gave a talk at South by Southwest some years ago, and it was preceded by me in my car just with, I like to be frank, and I just did a video like, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, and I can't say I coined the term, but I haven't heard it like that before, Entrepreneurial Depression. It got so many comments, and lo and behold, I applied to South by Southwest. They loved it, and the room was filled with people just resonating. So my point being, we entrepreneurs are a special breed, whether we have high growth startups, or in my case, I specialize in building niche publications. I'm a motivational speaker, et cetera. A little different, but same principle. I've been there. I've working full time at the United Nations, had a family to support, was going to school at night and running a business. So I get it. But yes, indeed. What's that?
That just the framing of that, being able to give it a name, it's helpful.
Yes, for sure. But indeed, the entrepreneurial journey is tough. But listen, I'm glad the Black Ambition Prize is here to help with that. I encourage people to apply. I encourage people to get on the website to look at all the programs we're doing. Anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to answer or share with us before we end? This has been a great discussion. I think shining the light on definitely a great project.
Yes, no, thank you so much for the opportunity to share more about the work that we do and to reach more folks and kind of sharing those resources. The last thing I'll maybe add is that, if you aren't an entrepreneur, right? If you are, you've spent 20 years in finance and you're a CFO and you're looking for volunteer opportunities, I'd love for you to reach out to think about how you can be a partner in supporting our entrepreneurs as a mentor, as a guest speaker, as an application reviewer, as we start to kind of score those applications. So just encouraging folks, like if you're not an entrepreneur, but you like being a resource entrepreneur, you want to be in this space, you feel like you've got something to contribute, a deep expertise in one of those 5 areas that we support, media and entertainment, healthcare, technology, Web3, consumer products and services, we'd love to explore what that looks like.
I love it. Listen, it's been great to have you with us today. The Black Ambition, why don't you give us the website one more time?
BlackAmbitionPrize.com.
Great. BlackAmbitionPrize.com. This is Ramon Ray, and this is The Rundown with Ramon. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you being here.